Hey, good morning, RJ.
Good morning, Judge.
We are live on YouTube as we speak, and I appreciate you joining us. I wanted to go ahead and get the stream going. Um, there's a there's a delay as well, so uh, I'm glad we're functional. And I appreciate you all.
That's why the same reason I wanted to get on a few minutes early.
No, I appreciate it very much, and um, glad that you could share. You and Michael share with the court. Um, you know, I don't think we have to take action. I just want to share because what we did back in approved in February, I think would cover what we're talking about. So
Right.
I just want them to hear directly from you all, and I think that's just the best way.
Sure.
So thanks for coming on, and I'm going to mute back out.
All right.
Good morning to everyone. Hope you're well. We'll get our Scott County Fiscal Court meeting started this morning. And, as we've shared in the past, in recognition of the situation with COVID-19 and following the governor's recommendation, we are meeting via Zoom. And this meeting is being shared and streamed live on our YouTube channel. And just want to make sure everybody's on the same page in respect to those demands because of the current situation. I appreciate you taking the time to meet and join in. We have a full agenda of business to attend to. I'm going to ask you, Stacy's going to call the roll for the record, and Stacy's on live right now as well. Just unmute and then mute your microphone back after she calls your name, and that way you can be recognized for the official roll. Stacy, will you call the roll?
Mr. Hostetler,
I'm here.
Mr. Lyons,
Here.
Mr. Wallace,
Here.
Mr. Corman,
Present.
Mr. Ellison,
Present.
Mr. Burke,
Here.
Mr. Livingston,
I'm here. I'm here.
Mr. Marshall,
Here.
Judge Covington.
I'm here. So I see no reason why we should not say the Pledge of Allegiance. So I'm gonna lead us in that. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Appreciate you all joining there. In your packet, you had the minutes of our previous meeting. We need to approve those minutes. Is there any questions or discussions about any item in those minutes?
Motion to approve from Kelly.
Second.
Yep. We have a motion from Mr. Corman and a second from Mr. Lyons. Any other discussion? All those in favor, please.
In favor? Aye.
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 I think we're unanimous. Minutes from the previous meeting are approved. Next item on our agenda, number 5, the transfers that were presented in the packet. Are there any questions or discussions in regards to the transfers as presented?
Judge, this is Rick. Make a motion to approve.
Motion from Mr. Hostetler. Is there a second?
Second.
Second from Mr. Wallace. Any other questions or discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
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 It's unanimous, Stacy. Transfers are approved. Number 6 on our agenda, bills and hand checks. Are there any questions or discussion in regards to the bills and hand checks as presented?
Make
There
a
a
motion, Judge, to
motion?
approve.
Motion from Mr. Livingston. Is there a second?
Second, Kelly.
Second from Mr. Corman. Any other questions or discussions? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Let the record reflect that that was unanimous approval. Moving to number 7 on our agenda, let the record reflect clerk fees in the amounts of $50,179.13 were presented. Any questions or discussion in regards to that? We'll move on to number 8. Let the record reflect that sheriff's fees in the amounts of $54,538.69 were turned in, and let the record reflect that. Any questions or discussion there? All right, we'll move on. At this time, I'm going to ask Michael George and RJ Palmer to share some information from Compass Municipal Advisors about how the market's changing and give us an update and for us to consider about moving forward. So RJ or Michael, either one of you all that want to move forward, and then we'll allow our court to ask any questions.
Great. Good morning, Judge. Can you hear me okay?
Michael, yes, sir.
Great. Well, again, I appreciate you all inviting us this morning. To Judge Covington's point, we wanted to update everybody on the status of your investments. Obviously, there's been a lot of volatility in response to the coronavirus. If you all remember, we were at the fiscal court meeting, I believe it was 2 months ago, to give you all the annual update, and had proposed taking about 8 million of the 18 million in your money market account and buying a laddered portfolio of treasury and agency securities. Since that meeting or shortly thereafter, we saw the Fed cut interest rates, and then we saw kind of the first implications of the coronavirus spread, which caused interest rates to drop dramatically. Accordingly, we did not purchase those securities as rates were essentially close to zero on those. So since then, we've been monitoring the market and trying to find kind of appropriate investments that provide yield and security. Obviously with uncertainty around your all's occupational tax collections, we think that liquidity is key. So with that, our thoughts would be to trim back the amount of securities purchased in this next round. You all have approximately $18.5 million that is liquid in the money market account. These funds can be accessed within 24 hours. So our initial thought was to purchase about 3 to 4 million, depending on what we can find, in municipal bonds. This would leave the county approximately $15.5 million liquid in the money market account, which is roughly 50% of your general fund expenditures, and would give you all a lot of flexibility on the operation side if we continue to see the fallout of coronavirus. With respect to that 3 to 4 million in municipal bonds, really that is the only permissible investment that we have seen that's actually providing yield right now. Again, Treasury and agency securities, CD rates have all dropped really below 50 basis points, close to zero in some instances. But there has been a lot less volatility on the rate side with respect to short-term municipal bonds. So if we go out and find municipal bonds that mature 3, 6, 9 months, a year, they are yielding, high quality bonds are yielding anywhere between 1 and 1.5% return. So our proposal or discussions with Michelle and the judge would be to purchase those bonds. We would limit the purchases to bonds that were either issued by the state of Kentucky and backstopped by the state of Kentucky, or are issued by Kentucky municipalities that have a AA rating or better. So we want to focus on the highest quality bonds available, and limit those purchases to securities that mature really within 15 months. So that again, you all have liquidity with the money market, and then you've got securities that will also be maturing within a relatively short window, in case you all need to access those funds. So that's kind of where we're at now. I will say that the ability for us to go out and purchase large amounts of short-term municipal bonds is somewhat difficult. It's a very thin market, and there's not a lot of inventory. But we would propose basically going in and buying those bonds as they become available and meet those thresholds with respect to both duration and credit quality. So with that, I'll turn it over to see if you all have any questions regarding what I just kind of laid out.
What questions would anyone have for Michael or RJ? And back in February, we authorized Compass Municipal Advisors to assist in the bidding of certain eligible securities deposited into the custodial account for the insurer. I don't know, and Rand is sitting here with us, with me in the courtroom. I don't know if we need a motion to authorize Compass Municipal Advisors to go forward with that as described. It never hurts, I don't think, but be anxious to hear what anyone would have to say or questions.
What is the interest rate on that money market that we've got? Just out of curiosity.
So the money market, as of yesterday, was yielding 25 basis points.
Okay.
So I think last time we met, it was closer to 155.
Right.
So we've seen a dramatic pull down in those rates.
Yeah, that's what I expected.
What other questions would anyone have for Michael or RJ?
What's the anticipated return as far as interest rate on the municipal bonds?
Well, we're seeing anywhere from 1 to 1.5%. There is a pretty big gap in terms of yield just because there's not a lot of inventory. So it's a wide range, but I think we would try to focus on the securities that meet the credit criteria we laid out and yielded anywhere from 1% to north of that. So you could theoretically get lucky and find some that may be around 150 to 175. And there may be some that we find that are closer to 1, but there's a broad range. But I think 1 to 1.5 is probably where 80% of those bonds are trading at the moment.
Rand's feedback indicates that we do not need a new motion to authorize Compass Municipal Advisors to move forward with purchasing those municipal bonds. It would fall under what we previously authorized. But if anyone wants, we can do that. Everybody good with moving forward as described? I see a thumbs up from Mr. Burke. I feel comfortable with
Yes.
being recommended, and I appreciate Michael and RJ reaching out and just sharing, how we can be best stewards of our tax dollars in that investment. And I think it's wise what they're recommending, and they'll move forward with it and then get back with us after they can give us an update on what they were able to purchase. RJ, is that fair?
Yes, sir, Judge. That's perfect. We'll be happy to do that.
All right, Michael, thank you as well. Anything else? Any other questions? Thank you all very much for joining us this morning.
Thank you.
All
Thank
right,
you all.
I'm going to move forward there with the franchise cable agreement and just discuss. This has been on the agenda prior. I'm going to turn the camera over to Rand. He's got a couple of adjustments, but basically what happened was our deadline fell when the coronavirus issue started, and we received no bids. The reason we received no bids was because the charter bid, the only bid that we received, charter bid got held up in Indianapolis somehow. And we eventually received it after the deadline. But in conversation with Rand, and he has the KRS, I'm going to turn it over to him, that we can negotiate now with any party to entertain that service. So I'm going to let Rand talk just for a minute.
Yeah, that's right. In a situation when you receive no bids, we can proceed with competitive or non-competitive bidding. If you've got a copy of this thing, on page 5, number 10, in the last sentence there, I think we've got to change that. It says, in the event of a conflict between grantor, which is us, ordinances, resolutions, rules, or regulations, and the provisions of this franchise, the provisions of this franchise shall govern. That obviously cannot be the case. Our ordinances trump anything in here. So I'm going to ask them to drop that. In number 12 on that same page, the last sentence there, until otherwise ordered by a court or agency of competent jurisdiction, the grantor agrees that to the extent permitted by state and federal law, it shall deny access to any of grantees' books, records, or maps marked confidential to any person. I think we need to drop the first part of that, until otherwise ordered by a court or agency of competent jurisdiction. We don't want to be in a position where we believe we should disclose something, but we can't because we agreed that we'd wait for a court or some agency like the Attorney General to tell us we had to. So I think we can say we won't turn it over unless state or federal law requires it, but we can't agree to that first part. And then the only other change I have, what's not in here is that the cable company will provide to county buildings free cable service, which has been the case. We enjoy that now. So I'm going to ask them to add that in there too, that would continue on. If you all have any questions, I'll be glad to try to answer them.
As discussed earlier, our revenue, if we enter into this agreement, what was estimated would go from approximately 35,000 to 76,000 or thereabouts. But the big key thing is that our citizens that are part of subscribers, they will not see a change in their bill. It's just it's revenue neutral for them. But what the county will do is see from the agreement. So that makes me feel good about that. What questions or any discussion in regards to this? And if there are none, would there be a motion to accept as presented?
Rand, can you hear me?
Yes.
Am I striking the first sentence of number 12?
No, in number 12, in the last sentence, Stacy, start until, strike until otherwise ordered by a court or agency of competent jurisdiction.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Any other question or comment? And is there a motion?
Judge, in the past franchise agreement, it was listed out properties, county properties that receive free cable service. It's not listed in this agreement. Rand referenced that he was going to put that in, that we need to be specific in what county buildings that we're specifically asking for service in as part of this agreement.
Yes, we'll list out, we'll list those out with addresses.
Rand,
Ma'am.
sorry. There's a cover sheet. I don't know if you have this. I can share it. It lists the buildings.
Oh, that's okay. Yeah, I don't think I have that. But we can, and it says those will be free, Stace?
Yes,
Okay.
Stacy, can you read those so Chad knows?
yes. It says that provided the locations are located up to 100 feet, 150 feet from Charter's existing distribution system. Scott County Fire Department, Georgetown Middle School, Southern Elementary School, Scott County Courthouse, Scott County Library, Garth Elementary, Scott County Sheriff's Office, Scott County Coroner, Scott County Sheriff, again, Scott County High School, 9th Grade Center, Scott County Fire Department, and Scott County Fiscal Court. And for Fiscal Court, it lists 133 North Hamilton, so that might be the attorney's office or something.
That's not our address, but we need to have the county attorney on there.
Yeah,
Okay, with the court, we'll add the other county buildings that we have that and inquire why they listed those elementary, middle, and high schools. Just, I don't want to cut them off for sure. I want to make sure they're still granted.
Yeah, I would have thought the jail would have been a part of that as well.
Yes, we'll add that, and if they don't agree, then we won't accept. I'm sure that they'll agree to do that because it's
I'll
not.
send this to you, Rand.
Judge, is that agreement, does that include, is it just cable or does it also include internet services?
Oh, it's just cable.
Just cable, okay.
Yeah.
I think we need to approve withdrawing from this telecommunications.
Rand also shares that part of the process is that I will send a letter to the state withdrawing from the telecommunications tax distribution fund. That's why we're setting up the franchise agreement. So that should be part of the motion, according to Rand's guidance. And so we'd be approving, the motion needs to be, we'd be approving the franchise agreement as amended by Rand and with county office site included to be listed by Stacy and I, and then also be approving withdrawing from the telecommunications tax distribution fund. Is there any motion out there? Anyone that would like to make a motion?
So moved.
Moved by Mr. Wallace. Is there a second?
Second, Kelly.
A second from Mr. Corman. Any other questions or discussion?
Joe, Ben, I think nobody cares. I'll probably ask that on that list, we list any future justice or similar building that may be constructed. That way, if we get it, they will have it free there too.
I think that would be wise as well. Definitely. I appreciate that, Rand.
Judge, do you have any idea how big their coverage area is? I know that's a pretty big question, but I know I was reading in I guess, number 6, their service. They have the right to expand, but no obligation to, as other areas of the county.
Yeah, I can tell you this, that it's public information. As part of the initiative that I'm working with on the Bluegrass ad to try to increase broadband in the rural part of our communities, doing it collectively with the Bluegrass ad. They were one of the respondents to the RFI. So they're interested in increasing service levels. And, you know, they responded to the request for information by the Bluegrass ad. I don't know how big their footprint is exactly right now. I do know that they cover, you know, Georgetown. They have some of Stamping Ground. That's about as much as I know. But they did respond, and I was very encouraged by their presentation that they did with the Bluegrass ad.
Thank you, Judge.
All right, so going back, we had a motion and we had a second from Mr. Corman. Is that correct? I think it is. All those, any other question or discussion? Otherwise, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
No.
Motion passes unanimously. Appreciate that. Next, number 11 on our agenda is coroner unpaid deputy new hire. And Stacy, do you have the specifics in regards to that?
Yes, I emailed the magistrates to tell them about an unpaid deputy that started in December of 2019, but never made its way to us. So I guess ask Rand if we can vote retroactive December 2nd. I did get the oath and the bond paperwork.
Yeah, I don't see any issue in making a retroactive vote to approve that.
Any other question or discussion in regards to that?
Judge, if you talk to the coroner and explain to him that this doesn't need to happen in the future, that any of these people need to be brought forth to the court.
I will share that data, sir. Yes, I will.
Thank you.
Is there a motion to
I guess we should say it's Mike Varney
okay.
and clarify he is unpaid.
All right. So the motion is to approve Mr. Mike Barney as an unpaid deputy coroner position.
So moved.
So moved.
Second.
Second by Mr. Hostetler. Any other questions or discussion? All those in favor?
Yes.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Number 12, EMA volunteers as emergency part-time for COVID-19 emergency response line. This is just going back and approving, like the court approved this action retroactively. We put this into place in an emergency kind of situation, did not want to be overran with calls and not be able to respond. And we're still running the helpline. The volume dictated that Mike and his assistant could handle that because it's not been as high as we anticipated, but we definitely wanted to offer the service to the community. Helpline is still up and running. We're going to try to promote it a little bit more over the next few days just to make sure people know that if they need help and they fall in categories that we can. So that is the gist of the motion would be to approve making EMA volunteers temporary part-time employees, emergency part-time employees for actions related to COVID-19 helpline.
Judge, did you say the call volume is kind of low right now?
Yes, I'll let Mike speak to it, but it dropped to where we felt like Mike and his assistant could handle it, and the helpline calls have been forwarded to the EMA office, and they're handling it right now. Mike, would you like to share what we've had this week?
reference the helpline, we've had 3 phone calls, but I've been using 2 of our volunteers / emergency part-time for managing the PPE deliveries and inventory. So even though we're not taking the phone calls, we're still having a lot of things that are COVID related that we're having to handle on a day-to-day basis.
Distributing that PPE and sure that our first responders and healthcare folks have that available is what you've been focusing on a lot lately.
Just wondering, Judge. Go ahead, Alvin.
I was going to ask, we're just looking for a motion now to do this temporarily. It's not going to address the.
No, this is just temporarily during the COVID-19.
Just want to clarify that, yes.
Yes, sir, just temporary. And I didn't feel like we had enough information to bring back the other discussion that we had at our last workshop about permanently doing that transition. Felt like we need to get a little bit more information and have that sent to you all so you all could digest before we talked about it. This is just the temporary motion for during this COVID-19 event.
Okay, I'll move to approve that temporary action.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any other questions or discussion?
Well, just one thing, Judge, I was wondering, maybe Mike can answer this. When you're talking about the distribution of the PPE, does that include the hospital? Are we helping them, or how does that work? I'm just wondering.
Yes, sir. We're assisting the hospital with their needs as much as we can. We've also provided some masks and gloves for the local long-term care facilities. Anything that shows up as a really strong possibility for an outbreak, we're trying to protect that ahead of time instead of trying to react to it.
Thanks, Mike.
So all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Thank you all. Next on our agenda is number 13, EMS medical billing renewal. And Brandon Rimley is on the call and on the meeting, the Zoom meeting. Brandon, could you share information related to this agenda item?
Sure, Judge. Thank you. Good morning, magistrates. Since 2013, we have worked with Ambulance Medical Billing out of Paducah, Kentucky, or AMB, and it is time to renew our contract. Whenever we renew our contract, they'd like for us to do a 3-year contract. That includes not only the billing services, but also our electronic health record subscription that we have, and it also includes updated mobile tablets for our ambulances. They currently collect 5.4% of all of our collections, or that's their payment that they receive, and it has not changed since we entered into the initial agreement back in 2013.
What questions or discussion do you have for Mr. Rimley in regards to this agreement?
The one question I've had, and I've asked you this before, Brandon, what's the recovery rate on our billing? About what percentage do we recover on an annual basis?
So, Chad, last year, give me just a moment, I can tell you what we collected last year. Last year, we collected $1,691,369. And that's just through insurance claims alone. Individuals that we have to turn over to collection, we usually get back about 1% of what we turn over. And that's usually about standard from speaking with other ambulance services that also use a collection company.
So what's the overall recovery rate? Do you have an idea? If you collected 1.6 million, how much did you bill out?
I would have to get that information, and I can get that for you, Chad, and send that out, or have Stacy send that out to you.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions, discussion?
Motion approved, Judge.
We have a
Second.
motion and a second from Mr. Lyons. Any other questions or discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any opposed? Motion passes. Appreciate that, Brandon. If you'll get that, we'll distribute it. Stacy will. Number 14, tax filing extension to match our federal guidelines. After talking with Rand, felt like this was something that would be appropriate and needed. And I'll let Rand just give you just a brief discussion in regards.
Yeah, I don't know that it would be automatic. So just in case it is not, as you know, I'm sure the federal government has extended the deadline until July 15th of this year. So probably be wise you all take a vote and extend that for the local returns.
Makes sense to me, and just makes it very clear, and there's no question about it. Any other questions or discussion in regards to that? And would someone willing to make that motion?
Motion.
Motion from Mr. Livingston,
Second from Kelly.
second from Kelly Corman. Any other questions or discussion? All those in favor? Any opposed? Motion passes. Thank you. Number 15, golf cart ordinance discussion. And I'm going to turn this over to Mr. Wallace. By no means are we doing anything other than having a discussion today about to see what the will of the court is about moving forward. And the reason we're here is Chad's had some of his constituents bring to him some concerns and requests, and I'm going to let Chad take it from here.
So one of my subdivisions that I represent has approached me about having golf carts approved in their neighborhood. Now, if you can recall, everybody except for the judge and Dwayne can remember a few years ago when Victoria Estates came to the court asking for their streets to be approved for golf carts, which is laid out by KRS. That we determined that they were private streets and that the HOA of Victoria Estates could determine if they want to have golf carts or not. In the subdivision that I'm representing now that's coming is called Morgan Manor. They are actually county roads. And in my thoughts with entertaining this subdivision coming to want to request the court for permission for golf carts to be on county roads, I started thinking in perspective of how many subdivisions that I represent that use golf carts on county roads currently that is technically illegal. I also represent Longview Golf Course and Longview Subdivision, which that happens frequently, and their roads are not approved. So my thought is that we should look at having a blanket approach to just allowing golf carts on county roads for all county roads. Now, the city of Georgetown currently allows golf carts on city streets. Passed back in, I believe, 07 or 08. And the KRS currently allows tractors, farm equipment, UTVs used for agricultural purposes, bikes, certain scooters, depending on the CC level. And the only thing that they don't go ahead and approve on public roads is golf carts. They leave that up to the fiscal court to determine whether or not we want to allow them on county roads. And so my thought was, instead of having each subdivision come and petition the fiscal court to allow golf carts in their subdivisions, that we should look at it as a blanket approach to having all county roads that have golf carts on them. And that would make it easier for the sheriff's office. So for example, in Homestead, they may not allow them, but they do allow them in Longview, and they're connected. It makes it simpler and an easier approach in my view. So that's what I want to get feedback today from the fiscal court in terms of if we wanted to draw up an ordinance or not.
If we do this, are we not given quasi approval countywide? Or do they still have to come to fiscal court and ask for permission?
The way the KRS is laid out, if we allow all county roads to have golf carts, then they would not have to come to fiscal court and petition every time a certain subdivision or even a certain group of houses on a road want to get golf carts in their area.
You know, I applaud this. I live in a golf community. We're in the county. We're also in the city. Right now with school out, we are just absolutely overwhelmed with 14-year-olds and 12-year-olds driving golf carts all over the subdivision willy-nilly. And it's something that needs to be enforced. We also need to lay it out what's required on a golf cart. And I think this ordinance does that. I'm okay with it. I don't have a problem with what Boone County has done. Matter of fact, we could just take Boone County out and put Scott County in, and I'd be happy with that. But if we say county roads, the population of Scott County is going to say, oh my God, you know, Canewood's in the county, I can do this. I think we need to find some way to split it out or separate it a little bit better. Or the city of Georgetown can adopt the same ordinance we have, and then we're covered with it.
Well, our ordinance would not apply within the city limits, correct?
I understand that, David. You and I know that, but the guy down the street from me does not. That's why I said I think I wish there was some mechanism to spread this or separate this and make.
I think Bill froze up.
Bill, you froze up on me.
Well, it wouldn't be the first time.
You're back in live action.
Okay. I think we need to separate the wheat from the chaff here, to be able to separate county from city roads and put in the ordinance so it's very explicit and there's no misunderstanding where we can or where we can't. Or the city of Georgetown and our ordinance mirror each other.
That's what I would anticipate, is it would be the exact same that it's laid out by the city, which is follows the guidelines that's laid out by the KRS. And also in the KRS, it has to deal with golf carts. It does not allow golf carts on state roads. It's only either county roads or city. So you're not going to see a golf cart on 460 or 25. You can't go across them technically.
I'm like Bill, like I have great concern about, you know, just when you say county roads, I would like to make it black and white exactly without as much confusion, and which roads are eligible. And you know, I think Rand would say that if we wanted to, we could talk to our colleagues at the city before going forward, but we can make it outside, you know, the city limits as well. But, you know, I think the Boone County ordinance that was shared as an example says any road, county road with a speed limit of 25 miles an hour or less. That's another caveat that I would want to have in there, but I'm not comfortable saying all county roads. That makes me very hesitant, and I'd like to do a little more research. But the main goal was, you know, what's the will of the court you know, what's your feedback about moving forward and what we need to bring back to the court in the future for something for you all to talk more about, and what Bill kind of laid out is bring back the Boone County ordinance, but delineate exactly what's a county road and have it black and white there. And we probably ought to
Judge-
get feedback from,
If we do this,
we need feedback from Sheriff Hampton as well.
if we do this and we say county roads, are we not usurping authority from the Stamping Ground and Sadieville mayors and their city councils? Or do they still
Because
have?
our ordinances won't apply within city limits, correct?
I would think that's right.
This would not apply in incorporated areas like Sadieville, Stamping Ground, and others.
It should be spelled out that way.
Yeah, we can spell it out in the ordinance. That's no problem.
Well, the other thing
I think that's with any ordinance that we enact, correct? It doesn't apply within the incorporated areas of a city.
Yes, that's right.
The other thing on here too is I requiring the inspection, because, you know, it's talking about $5 if they bring it to the sheriff's inspection site, or $10 if the certified inspector travels to the golf cart. I don't think that the time of our deputies should be spent traveling to people's homes to do inspections on golf carts. I don't know that the law enforcement was ever designed to, that is one of their charges. And then I'd like to know what a certified inspector consists of. What kind of training is that? What kind of certification? Because what if a deputy does a certification, but there is an issue with it that we're unaware of, and there's a wreck and it causes injury, but we didn't catch it? How does that put us on the hook for anything going forward?
Stacy, if you'll get that question written down, and as I mentioned, before we move any forward, I think we need to down with Sheriff Hampton and get some feedback from him, and then get those questions answered.
Was there an age limit?
Yeah, 16.
Yes.
16, okay.
Licensed and insured.
Yeah,
It's
it's
part of,
Yeah, I had questions about the inspection too, but the sheriff's office do inspections now. If I buy a truck out of state, before I can license it here, they have to inspect it. So they're doing that now, but we need to get Tony in to explain.
Yeah,
Exactly.
I'm good with a truck, but you know, golf carts with I don't know how that's going to work. And then Chad, in this ordinance, it does say be operated only on a designated county or road approved by fiscal court. So we can actually say what roads and what roads can be driven on and what roads cannot.
If you
and the way they do that though is they've got a little committee set up, David, is what you're talking about there. So they have a committee set up to make a recommendation to deny or approve, the way I read it, on any given road. It goes back to what Bill and the judge were talking about just doing a carte blanche, the whole county, which I have a problem with also. Sorry, Chad.
That's fine. I had talked with Sheriff Hampton, and he had looked at the ordinance, and he was okay with moving forward. They do have people, what Alvin alluded to, who go to certification training to certify trucks that are bought out of state, that are brought in. You have to pay them money right now to make sure they're certified. That person who does that, or those people who do that, have training. I would assume that would, well, I'm not going to assume anything, but we need to find out if that would apply to golf carts. As well as the city of Georgetown currently, in the past, when that was set up with the city, that ordinance, once a year, they would come out to a subdivision and tag and certify golf carts that were allowed to drive. So it's not a continuous thing, David, as far as in terms of them going and having to respond, and unless it was brought down to the sheriff's office where they could certify it. And they do that now with trucks that are bought out of state.
We will.
I'd like to know, it'd be nice to know if there's any way to find out what call volume is caused by this. Because if there's a high call volume, and in some areas there will be some neighbors that are very unhappy about it. And every time you turn around, they're going to be calling dispatch. I don't know that the $5 and $10 is an adequate fee for the inspection.
The issue that I am dealing with is they're illegal now, and they are in subdivisions primarily in the county, and the neighbors generally allow them to do it unless there's an issue, and then they can call the sheriff's office now. My thought is just let's just follow the KRS and make them legal. And so then if a deputy has to respond, then now he's got more beef as far as in what he's looking for if they want to write a citation or they want to give a warning out for these people who have been called in for some type of violation.
Okay.
Hey, Judge,
Yes, sir.
one other question to go along with this, it's kind of a side issue, but it pertains to this, is getting public input. That's kind of tough to do on the way we're meeting now. I know Chad's been talking to his folks. You know where I'm coming from? It's
Yeah, 100%. And, I think what we'd be doing is something that we do have to definitely on social media, try to look with our partners, down our community partners that distribute information, and try to petition folks to give us feedback before we move forward. One of the flips of this is kind of what's, Chad, you correct me if I'm wrong. What's gone on in the past is if an HOA wanted to petition the court, it was kind of general practice that if an HOA came to the court, we would consider it for that area. And the thought process is, people buy homes in areas and kind of, they want, they acknowledge when they buy a home that has an HOA that they're going to kind of follow the HOA bylaws, and they know that's part of the deal. We'd be taking that out of the HOA hand and moving it essentially to the court. And we are elected representatives. I mean, we can do that, but I'd like to get feedback from different, from different areas, just saying, yeah, we'd support this because we are shifting things. When people move into an area and they know they're going to live by the covenants and the bylaws of the HOA. Well, now they might not want to live in a neighborhood that has golf carts. But it comes down to what we want to do. And I do think, Rick, it's very important to get feedback from the community and see what kind of feedback we get.
We feel like this is, a short-term issue because we've got so many kids home and whatever, or is this just an everyday thing? Or is it just, I know I've got golf carts in my neighborhood that I've never seen. We all do right now. We're all just, going crazy, stir crazy. So they're doing everything they can to stay busy. Is it just a short-term issue that we're jumping into?
I think it's a long-term issue. We've had this discussion 2 or 3 times in the last 5 or 6 years.
Yeah, it's a reoccurring issue.
Just to kind of clarify a little bit, and I think Dwayne's question is relevant. All these other things are approved by state statute, UTVs, ATVs, motorbikes, scooters. The only thing that they allow fiscal courts to approve or disapprove on certain roads is golf carts. So KRS says, hey, we're going to either say yay or nay on all these other things, except for golf carts. Then we're going to let you all decide whether you want to have it or not. And so we can either do it, per subdivision or per area, or we can do a blanket deal, or we can not do anything. And the people who still ride them are still going to be breaking the law.
Well, and that you're exactly right, Chad, that they're still, I think if you have a new broom sweeps a clean floor, we come in and make just a countywide ordinance, then everybody's going to be on the same page. And It's not by, well, you can do it in this neighborhood or that neighborhood. Our sheriff's deputies wouldn't have to worry about that. That is a plus about what kind of the Boone County example would bring for us. Is that it, Chad?
Yes.
Okay. Bill, I think you'd see it the same way, wouldn't you?
Yeah, I think that it needs to be universal. As far as Scott County goes, we say, here's the standard, the golf cart either meets the standard or does not. And the inspection fee, oh, Judge, we can't keep them out of Elkhorn Creek. How are we going to police, 1,500?
I'm not going there.
How are we going to police 1,500 golf carts or 1,000 golf carts?
I'm not going there, but that can be a topic for another day.
Again, I didn't want to bring Elkhorn Creek into it, but again, we have an ordinance in a county park that says no swimming, and we have difficulty enforcing that. How are we going to enforce 800 golf carts or 500 or however many we have? I agree we need to do something. I'm just not sure that this is the way to do it.
We'll get this information. We'll try to petition the public for feedback, and then we'll go from there. Is that fair?
Hey, Judge.
Yes, sir.
One other comment. It's on the what you're just saying about getting public input, not only on this issue, but just going forward. You and I have talked. I'm very uncomfortable with the way we're doing it, but I understand why we're doing what we're doing. And I know the legislation's there, and I know the notices went out, and hopefully the public, if they're interested, are watching us online. But do you see any way that they could participate in these meetings, or that may be chaos? I don't know, but you know where I'm coming from. Any given discussion like we're having, we need more feedback from the public, and this has been a great discussion on this particular topic. But I'm sure the folks would like to say something, but this applies to any of our topics going forward.
Well, Rick, I'll certainly try to, it is a challenging
time.
And, we'll do our best to try to promote on social media and see if Georgetown News Graphic would help us to continue to let people know that, we'll be streaming live. And just to be honest, it's, we do not have an IT director. You're looking at the IT director. And I've spent probably, several hours navigating, getting this where I think today has been very good. But the only other way we could do this is if we went Facebook Live, and then people could, and I think YouTube has a place where you can make comments as the meeting's going. It's just
they do have a live chat.
Yeah, it's just a very challenging thing to be able to incorporate into the view. And but Rick, I agree. I think we are here to represent our community, and the public should have as much knowledge and information as possible, and ability to give us feedback. It's just a challenge, and I'll keep trying to see if we could have someone responding to live chat and sharing questions with us as we go through our meeting. I think that's kind of like what you're, is that right, Rick?
It is. And Judge, I want to say that I thought our workshop went well last week, but this is even better. And I appreciate all the work you're doing. I know JR and some of his folks have been helping, various ones. I appreciate it. I'm not really trying to stir the pot. And I know you know that. I don't think I'm alone. I think the other guys feel the same way.
And please know, I know that you weren't trying to stir the pot, and it's okay.
Yeah, he was.
Thanks,
he's a known pot stirrer.
But no one disagrees that we need public input and we need public feedback. and we'll try to get where we can have replies to live chat on YouTube. And I actually tried to go down the road of doing YouTube and Facebook Live at the same time. And that's, that's a challenge I've been looking at as well. We'll continue to try to make public have public input as much as we can.
Thanks, Judge.
No. Number 16, I just wanted to follow up on the presentations last week from the Shepherd's House and the Isaiah House. And it is my opinion that there is no question that we need as a court to consider one of those programs to move forward with as a partner to help people that are struggling with addiction, that find themselves in areas where they violated the law. And then I think by providing this program, it could also give us a positive of positively impacting the number of people that are incarcerated in our Scott County Detention Center. So I think that, we're going to, if we consider moving forward with one of these programs, I think we're going to really help individuals and help our community, but also help reduce the overcrowding at our detention center. Continuing to do what we've been doing without providing additional services and options for people that are battling addiction, I think is short-sighted and would not be doing what's best for our community. And I just use Danville and Bull County as the example. Danville and Bull County, their partnership with the program that they're working with the Shepherd's House, they really feel like it's been a big positive impact on people's lives and the community. I'm not in a position right now to say I want to recommend one or the other. You all have all of the information that I have about the cost, about the different options that they provide. And what I wanted to do today was open up the topic for discussion and ask what other questions that you all might have that I could gather and that we could bring back to the court as a whole at our next meeting for possible consideration for after July 1. What I would like to do is have a consideration for possibly putting this in the budget for after July 1. I'll open it up for discussion.
Judge, I want to ask two questions. First of all, would the money to pay for either Isaiah's house or Shepherd's house be coming out of the jailer's budget? And the second thing is to me, one of the areas that I'm not sure, I need to get some direction on. I believe in Isaiah's house proposal, they included money to find a location to house their folks with. In the Shepherd's house, I do not believe it's included. And do you have any idea on what location, and are they depending on the county to come up with a location for them, and then we would pay for that?
Okay, Chad. Number one, I do not believe that either proposal includes monies for leasing a site. And I'll get that clarified, but I do not believe either proposal includes monies. What I do know is I believe that the Isaiah House proposal includes monies that would essentially create the equipment that they need in a building to get started. It's just I'm looking right now in the proposal. I worded it, but it was initial operating items is how they outlined that, and I think that was like $13,714 is what I see. But I'll clarify that. But I don't believe either proposal includes like the monies that it would cost to lease a building that would meet their needs?
I thought one of them, and I can't remember which one, spoke to the fact that they were going to find a place, whereas I'm confused on which one it was. The other one was depending on to use a building that we maybe currently have, because Chad and I were kind of going back and forth about, is there a location? Just between us trying to think through a location for either or, and couldn't think of one. So I do remember one of them. I can't remember who asked the question, but asked them would they find a site, and they were kind of going to be doing that themselves. Is the way one of them spoke, as if that might not be something we had to deal with, but we might be paying for their operational furniture and things like that, though, on that end. Am I wrong on that?
Well, I'll get it clarified.
Okay.
Stacy, if you'll write that down for me, that's question number one. Does the proposal include monies to pay for a lease on the building? I'll get that. Now, Chad, help me go back to what.
Is it coming out of the jailer's budget?
That is dictated totally where funds are allocated from and expenditures are from is totally dictated by the DLG. And from what's been shared with us from the DLG is that this type of program and a home incarceration program as well has to come out of the jailer's budget. So the funds for this would have to be allocated in those line items. Stacy, do you have any? That's what we've determined in our conversation with DLG staff. Correct? You're muted, Stacy.
Sorry. Michelle confirmed with DLG that we would put a line item in the jail section of the budget.
But it's not really a choice. It's what they told us where it had to be.
Yes, that's where it best fits.
Okay. What else, Chad?
That's it. That's the only questions I had.
That covers it. And I've been racking my brain about potential sites and where it would be. And does the county have any square footage that would meet the needs of one of these programs? And right now, I can't sit here and say, hey, let's think about this. I can't, I don't have it. And I would welcome your all's feedback on any potential sites as well. I think the big question, you can't ignore that because, it needs to be in a spot that's accessible. But also, if the county's going to be paying that, we don't need to go into it without trying to at least have a good ballpark number on a site and how much the lease would be. And if that's additional monies that need to be allocated towards this project.
And from an insurability standpoint, what does Boyle County do?
The Boyle County program, if you remember the conversation, I think it was a Red Cross building that essentially was given to the Shepherd's House, and the Boyle County Fiscal Court allowed the Shepherd's House to use that building. Chad and I visited that building. Is that what you remember as correct, Chad?
Yes.
Okay. What other questions?
Did we have we seen the other group's facilities, which would be the Isaiah? Did you all get a chance to visit any of those?
I have not been to Willisburg to their residential facility there. We could definitely try to visit that facility.
Yeah, Judge, I've been down there numerous times to the Isaiah House. They have over 100 clients that stay there on a daily basis. They also have some remote halfway houses, I guess, for lack of a better term. They're about an hour from Scott County.
And your observations while there, Rick, were positive?
Pretty impressive what they do. Pretty impressive. They were donated or given somehow an old school building in Willisburg, the thriving metropolis, and they took their clients through the years and they have totally renovated that place. Also used that as an opportunity. They've started small businesses, and they, with their clients, they go out and perform services and actually get paid. But they started by remodeling and renovating that old schoolhouse, and it's pretty nice looking. So,
I think both programs have very positive feedback, and both programs provide a lot of different services to people, to individuals that are in need here in our community. And I think we just need to try to get these questions answered. And if we wanted to try to visit the Isaiah House or go back to the Shepherd's House, if you'd want me to try to set one more, opportunity to visit either one of those or both, I'll be happy to do that. And it's just kind of with the COVID-19 right now, it's kind of tough. But if that's something you all want to do, I can do that. What's the general, what's your all's general thoughts on, one of the, do we need to move forward with consideration of one of the programs eventually next year's budget?
well, one of the things, Judge, and I can't remember which one it was. I want to say that it was the Isaiah House, but it might not have been. They are already transporting people with a van from, was it the Isaiah House or Shepherd's House that were
That was the Isaiah. You're going to Toyota Two Show?
Is that, yeah, that's what they said. Was
Yeah,
it the
Toyota
Isaiah
Two
House?
Show. Toyota Two Show donated a van, and I don't know where those individuals are transitioning from, but I don't know if it's Willisburg or another site, but they are providing transportation to folks, so that and Toyota Two Show is a partner, and folks are working there.
Well, I can tell you one of the things, like I think, I'm thinking that it's about an hour's drive, maybe a little over, but they did say it was Isaiah House, but I think they maybe have a halfway house or some of those type of opportunities closer, but I'm not sure. But at the Isaiah House, I know that there are some local businesses, even though Willisburg doesn't have a lot going on. Connecting County have several businesses that they actually transport. Even when I was down there probably 5 years ago or 6 years ago when I first found out about them, they actually have been transporting. Those guys have a job, and the Isaiah House oversees taking care of that. They're supervised. They're tested on a regular basis. They take them in the mornings, bring them back after their shift's over, those kind of things. There's a lot to offer there. It's well worth going to see, and I'd like to go if we can have the opportunity. I know this COVID thing has got us all messed up, but I'd like to see, where was that, in Danville? That the Shepherd's House is
in Danville, yeah.
I didn't get to go with you guys that time, so it's well worth seeing what they're doing.
Yeah, I'll be happy to reach out and try to get these questions answered. And then, the bottom line is, I think it would help individuals, help our community, and then also the potential of reducing the pressures at the Scott County Detention Center would be very important as well. So,
Joe, my opinion is we do it with one of them. It's just working out the details. I mean, I think we have to do something, and I think it's a win-win, if it's successful, but there's a lot of details to be worked out, as far as how it all shakes out, location, stuff like that.
So, if you have any additional questions, email me. Stacy has been, Stacy will try to get all these questions answered. And and then try to, I'd ask you to go back and review that, both of the packets pretty thoroughly and try to dig in. I know you've all and reviewed them, but go back one more time and try to think of any other questions, get back to me. And then, you know, while you've got plenty of spare time, if you want to get in your car and drive around and try to scout locations, that would be great too. I think that's the big piece of it as well. So we'll move from that unless there's any other comments. It sounds like we want to move forward with considering a program and try to get those answers to the questions. Next, 17 on our agenda, April 23rd meeting. Do you want to move that to 9 a.m. instead of 7 p.m.?
I'm concerned about Bill and the black hole he's getting ready to go into.
Yeah, we're trying to move us along, Bill.
3 or that morning would be fine.
Anybody have a problem with moving to 9 a.m.? Is there a motion? Somebody make a motion.
Motion.
Motion from Mr. Livingston.
I'll second.
There's a second from you, Mr. Ellison. Any other questions?
Yes.
Discussion?
Yeah, I do. Will that have to be a special meeting and it'll be a set agenda with no new business?
If we move the time, it will have to be a special call. Yes. And we can make sure we try to have a comprehensive agenda. So we'll do our best on that. So there's a motion and a second. All those in favor? Any opposed? Motion passes. I'm going to go right now and try to get Kelly Baker, District 7 engineer. He's in charge of District 7 for state transportation. And JR is on here. And JR, would you share your thoughts about the roundabout at the bypass and Kentucky 32?
Yes, sir. Can you hear me, Judge Magistrate?
Kelly, I've got you on here. You're going to be on by voice. So JR Williams, all right, JR is talking, so just listen for a second.
Okay.
Go ahead, JR.
Okay. As someone who travels that road numerous times a day, I would encourage our fiscal court to do whatever we can to help get this roundabout. That is a very dangerous intersection, especially when the other part of the bypass is opened up. Like I say, there's an oversized stop sign right now at the end of the new section where you come up on Long Lick. It's constantly run. People just speed right on through it. And from a safety standpoint, I would love to see a roundabout there. You know, western part of the county is kind of big on agriculture. You see numerous pieces of farm equipment going through there. It takes a little bit longer to get through a stop sign. So Toyota gets going back full swing. It's going to be another volume of traffic moving through to pick up West 64. So I would love to encourage whatever we can do to help get this roundabout done.
So a question from our last work session conversation was, you know, what was the original plan when the last leg of the bypass was let out, that, you know, that bid? And I spoke with Kelly Baker. I have him on the line. I'm going to let him speak to that and give me a thumbs up if y'all can hear him. Go ahead, Kelly.
Okay, well, good morning, everybody. I apologize I couldn't get through on the Zoom. We've got some issues with that on our end, but can everybody hear me?
Yeah.
The design that we've got for the intersection is just when it went through the project team, is just a standard intersection. The bypass was intended to be a through movement, and what we've got on the plans would be a stop condition on the 32 sides, on the approaches of 32. And unless we change something, that's what's in our plans right now. what got us to looking at the roundabout was a few months ago, Senator Thayer had reached out to me, and I think he had, and the judge also had heard from some folks that was concerned about a stop condition on 32, on the 32 sides. We started looking at it, and as JR said, from a safety perspective, the roundabout seemed to fit really well at this intersection, and that we went ahead and got a design together. I got our folks do a design. We reached out to the contractor and got a price. Actually negotiated them down to 700,000. They started with like 1.2 million is what they wanted. So we worked them down to a price that we felt comfortable with. My plan with it was to do a change order and add it to the current project. But like I was explaining to the judge, the whole timing with the virus and what our revenues are right now, that's what's got us sidetracked right now. And our leadership in talking to them didn't, because of funding, didn't want to proceed with funding the full amount for the roundabout right now. So that's what's led to the discussions that we're having.
And Kelly, the first thing that we next talked about was, what about a stoplight? And you have shared concerns and data about how that is not that's not the best alternative as well. Could you share with the court about that?
Yeah, the first issue with the signal is that, the way we look at it is looking to see if it meets warrants based on volumes. And that's why the project team initially didn't put a signal there, is because it doesn't, based on traffic volumes alone, it doesn't meet warrants. So that's one issue. But I guess the greater issue here is when we look at doing something additional with the intersection is trying to make, a pitch for something from a safety perspective. And, we don't consider a signal as a safety device. Usually when we're putting a signal out there, it's because the intersection is just from a congestion standpoint or something such as that, that's really the last resort that we have. So that's really why we didn't give much consideration to a signal there. When this came back up, I did go back and relook at the warrants to make sure we weren't missing something there. And just based on the projected traffic volumes, it doesn't meet for the warrants. So some things we've been seeing with signalized intersections is, when you have accidents, you can have some pretty severe accidents, and that's our concern with the signal there. So that's why, even though it costs more, that's why we're pushing for the roundabout option.
And just, Kelly doing his due diligence notified me that, because of the situation with the virus, that roundabout was going to be taken out. And, the very first day I said, well, is there anything that can be done to get that done? And talked about, could the court make some type of contribution to the project? And the issue is, and the question is, what would the state be willing to do? It would to be willing to move forward with the roundabout with X amount of contribution. The question is, what is that X? And one of the things that I threw at Kelly and asked Kelly was, what if we committed for the next 2 years our flex funds in lieu of using those on paving projects, just committed it to this. Plus, and we also threw out, the prospect of the court committing cash, a check. But, by no means have we said, hey, we'll do this. It was just trying to get a ballpark of where we would be. Because I do believe, and, JR and, I think Kelly's staff would all tell us that the safest approach is the roundabout. So really what I'm asking you all today is what questions do you all have for Kelly? And then do you want to make some type of proposal to move forward? Or do you want to leave it as a stop sign with where we're at possibly now?
Have we got an answer to what is the X? Like, how much do we, if we offer whatever our 2 years of flex, is that going to be enough for the state to then still move forward, or is that not enough? How much do we need to put in the pot for them to move forward? Have that? Do they even know that number yet?
Kelly, can you answer that?
Well, what I threw out to our leadership just to get a feel was a 50-50 split. The response I got back from that was maybe, but I did make some calls, and I feel confident if that's what we do that I could make it happen. I was telling the judge, maybe you want to offer something less and let me run it up the flagpole and see what they say. The RS, the rural secondary flex, is an option. I checked on that. I wasn't sure if we could move those pots of money, but they did say since 32 is a rural secondary road, you could commit your RS flex money to this. And you just in the coming years, you'd be foregoing that flex portion that you would usually get to be able to use on something else. But that is possible. But I don't know what the exact number would be, but whatever it is, I'll just take it to them and see what they say.
One other topic that I addressed with Kelly, and I'd like Kelly to share, about the radius of the roundabout being big enough to handle agricultural traffic and tractor trailer traffic. Kelly, would you share with that as well?
It is. The design does accommodate that. Large trucks. JR's mentioned, farm equipment or large farm equipment. It'll accommodate that. If you wanted to look at one, we've got that one on Old Frankfort Pike right off of New Circle Road there out of Lexington. It probably be similar to that, not exactly that, but on the inside, they usually have a radius that kind of has a little rolled curb that trucks and anything big can get up on and travel on if they need to. So the design would be similar to that, but that is, we did accommodate for that.
So
yeah, I'd like to comment. I agree with JR that intersection, if we leave that with just a stop sign like they're talking about, you're going to have somebody or a whole family killed. It'd be unconscionable to leave that like that. But I think the state bears a lot of responsibility for that poor design of having that design for that intersection. I use that a lot. Depending on the height of your vehicle, some of the sight lines are bad, depending on what vehicle you're in. Someplace you can't see very far coming out off the bypass onto 32. We've got to do something.
Right.
I think the state should have, in their design process, should have factored that in. So I don't think it should be half our responsibility by any means. If we have
I'll
to
agree with Alvin.
But that we can't let that acceptable.
Something that has changed since we designed that a few years ago is the new school over on Betsy Way. So I think what you would see, with the school to school traffic, a movement in the morning peak that would stack up at a stop sign would be coming from Cardinal Drive to come up to the bypass to turn left. So I see that probably in the morning peak with where you would see the most issue with cars stacking up, because that'd be a pretty significant volume right there, and that's the leg too where you come over a little rise there approaching the intersection too.
Yeah, it has it's got a little rise, and then you're coming down that hill to that stop sign. It's not if somebody's moving along pretty good, it's not a lot of space to lock it up.
And that is a good comment. We'll look at that, because part of this roundabout would be lowering that to make sure the sight distance is all good approaching the roundabout. So, one way or the other, I think that was something that we would need to address anyway. So maybe that's a portion, whatever the cost of that is, that we could, pull back from the county side of things if you do want to contribute something to it.
I would ask the court, do we want to consider, you got a couple of options. You can consider making a motion to commit the rural secondary flex funds for the next 2 years towards this project. Kelly, that would probably be around $200,000 or thereabouts.
Close to it. I think it changes a little bit each year, but I think you had what, 95,000 this year is what the amount was.
And last year it was a little bit, it was 112, 120 or so. I don't think it's quite 120, but that's an option. Another option is just to I don't think an option is to not make some type of offer for contribution. But what does the court want to,
Well, hey, Judge, before we get on that, let me ask this question to Kelly. So when Casey came and did his presentation about flex funding, I believe he said that our roads right now are on about a 17-year cycle, which means they get repaved every 17 years. So if
I think it's worse than that.
Okay. Then what you're saying is if we forego our flex money, then there's a chance that a state road could get repaved once every 20 years. That's what we need to take into consideration, correct?
Chad,
that's right.
That is what we're doing is we're using that funds and it would the paving on state roads, rural secondary roads would get pushed out 2 years. So the other option is instead of doing rural secondary funds, in my opinion, we could consider, something in the next year's budget as a capital contribution. What that dollar amount is, I want to hear from you all. I don't want it to be from just me.
JR, can I ask you? JR would.
Rural secondary funds we're talking about is the flex.
Yeah, just the flex.
That piece where you can put on a county road or put back to a state road, you'd still be getting your same allotment, rural secondary allotment that you'd be getting each year. We're only talking about the flex, which you're put that flex back towards state roads. That does help your resurfacing cycle.
Yes, sir.
In conversations with JR, JR and I both agree that it is wise in general practice, to give those flex funds back to the state for their discretion on paving on those rural secondary roads. It just, we think that we're allocating money for those paving on those other roads. It's wise to do that, and we can do that.
I agree.
You agree, JR, with that?
Yes, sir.
JR, how long do we, aren't roads supposed to get 15 to 20 years of life?
Well, technically, yes, but it all depends on the volume of the traffic. And I probably get 12, 15, more like 15-year cycle on our roads.
Okay. They don't make them like they used to?
No, they do not. Environmentally friendly blacktop.
Judge, two comments, or one comment, one question. And for Kelly, the size of this roundabout, when you take $500,000 out of that bid, that's kind of a comment. That's kind of shocking. That's about 40% of the bid. I don't know how you got that accomplished. Does that mean the size of it goes down? Will it be is it just one lane in there? Is it just one lane in the circle?
Yes.
I know there's a roundabout in Lexington that's got 2 lanes.
It'd be one lane, Rick.
Is that where the decrease in cost came down? Because it would have been 2 lane maybe or bigger. I'm looking at a 500.
Part of that was there's some culverts in there. They had already built a culvert underneath of the new section of the bypass. So we were looking to extend that. So we tightened that up a little bit where we could avoid all of that extra field work and drainage. But they had quite a bit of fluff in their initial price that we've had to haggle over with increased pricing on asphalt and different things. And initially, I'm not so sure they were too interested in doing it, but that's where most of that came down from.
Okay. I guess it
What
comes
other
down to
questions y'all have
competition.
for Kelly? And then, you know, does the court want to, you know, have, you know, what do you want to do to move forward with it?
Judge, I think it would be wise if we, this is my thought, and obviously, just to throw this out, that we would make a $100,000 pledge, and then the possible concession of 2 years of flex funding as a proposal to the state to make this happen. That's just my thought.
So your motion would be for $100,000 pledge in 2 years of flex funding, rural secondary flex funding commitment to get the roundabout. Is there a second on that, or what discussion?
I'd like to.
I didn't make that as a motion. I just asking for, that's my thought.
Oh, okay. Please excuse me.
My opinion is we offer the 2 years first and then go from there.
Bill Burke, what do you have?
You're not going to like what I have to say.
Well, we might.
I don't feel it's the county's responsibility to pay for a poor design. Now, we have known for 5 or 10 years, okay, that a high school was going to be built on Betsy Way, okay, or next to Great Crossing, or next to Western Elementary. So those plans have been around for a long time. The bypass plans have been around for a long time. And they knew when they started this project where it was going to start, where it was going to end. Okay. And now they come back to us and say, we screwed the pooch. Oh, sorry, a stop sign's not very good. We want you to pay for half a roundabout. No, I don't agree with that at all.
Well,
I don't feel like we should ask county taxpayers to pay for a poor job done by the state transportation cabinet.
Go ahead, Kelly.
Well, I mean, our team still feels that what we've got will work. And, you know, I guess we're hearing some concerns, but, you know, until it's opened up and we see those concerns, we don't know that there will be issues there. So I think the roundabout is a significant improvement there, but, you know, where we are with funding, kind of what I'm being told is let's wait and see if there are issues there or not.
You know, your funding is impacted the same way ours is. Okay.
Yeah,
so yeah, the state's hurting for money, and the county is too.
Yeah, it is unfortunate. The timing is awful because, I mean, our revenues, you know, with the gas receipts, we get 80% of our funding from gas receipts and fees on selling cars, and that's tanking right now. So
and we get most of our money from payroll taxes, and that's tanking too.
Yeah.
So we can sit here and talk about it and go back and forth, and I certainly respect Mr. Burke's opinion and understand, but here's the bottom line. I can't do anything about what happened in the past. We were sitting here and I am being told that the roundabout is the best option. I'm being told that we'll have a stop sign unless we potentially offer some type of contribution. In the sake of safety and concern for our community, I'm willing, I'll make the motion to offer up 100,000 and 1 years of flex funds and see if they would accept that as a contribution to move the whole project forward.
Judge, I'll second that, but the option of waiting to see what happens there is not acceptable, because I know what's going to happen there. If you just put stop signs, somebody's going to get killed. So that is not an option.
That's why I make the motion to at least make some type of offer of contribution to see if it goes forward. And my motion would be that we would make the contribution after July 1, and that the flex funds would come out of 21-22.
Can I ask a question?
Yes, sir.
and this is for Kelly, when you all are building a project, how far out do you try to project with regards to increase in daily vehicle usage, population growth, and things of that nature?
I mean, that's built in there. I mean, our planners are more familiar with that than I am, but you know, we try to incorporate any development that we are aware of coming, and then for what we don't know is coming, we try to throw assumptions and projections at it to try to assume. That's built in there. The details of that I'd have to go back and see exactly what they look at. It's basically when we start developing a project, there's a study done, and they put assumptions on it. It's not a given science, but we do try to project out to see what the volumes will be down the road.
What other comments, questions from the court?
You made a motion, correct?
I have made a motion.
I'll second it.
I believe Alvin seconded it already.
Alvin already seconded. Any other questions? All those in favor? Aye.
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 No.
Any opposed?
Yes. No.
One in opposition, Mr. Burke. Baker, we will get this in some type of formal letter to you, and we'll send it to you for the state transportation cabinet's consideration.
Okay, yeah, just send that to me, and I'll get it to the secretary's office, and we'll see what they want to do with it.
Hey, I appreciate your time, and appreciate you joining us in. Thank you.
All right, thank you, everybody.
Yes, sir. Thank you. All right, that moves us next to new business and new business. Sheriff Hampton and Gerald, Captain Porter, are you all on the call? Sheriff Hampton and Captain Porter. Could somebody text them? And then I'm gonna turn it to Rand. Rand had that the sheriff would like us to consider regarding last week's work session discussion regarding the grant application.
Stacy, can you tell me what resolution number this would be?
Sorry, are we talking about the sheriff grant?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes.
Okay, Rand, if you want to go ahead and read it, I will get in the resolution file and figure it out.
Okay. All right. I would have gotten this to you ahead of time, Stace, but I just did it yesterday afternoon. This is the sheriff's application for a Homeland Security grant. Whereas the County Sheriff's Office desires to apply to the Department of Homeland Security for a grant to purchase license plate recognition, LPR devices, and whereas the LPR system will allow the Sheriff's Department to identify license plates that are associated with criminals and/or criminal activity. And whereas the Scott County Fiscal Court believes that the expenditure for such a system would be beneficial to the citizens of Scott County, now therefore be it resolved by the Scott County Fiscal Court as follows. The Scott County Sheriff's Office Department is hereby authorized to apply to the Department of Homeland Security for a grant in the amount of $70,000 to purchase license plate recognition devices for the department.
What questions does anyone have in regards to that resolution and any discussion?
Rand, that will be resolution number 20-05.
Thank you. And I'll shoot you a copy, Stacy, before I leave today. I'll email it.
Okay, thank you.
Is there any questions or discussion in regards to that request for allow them to apply for that grant?
David brought up last week concerns about kind of the big brother feel to this type of equipment. And I would like to see us have a strict set of rules to how it's going to be applied before it's used. I don't have a problem going ahead and applying for the grant, but I think before it's put into use, we should have a strict set of guidelines of how it's used, only public roads and, you know, that type of thing.
Any other comments in regards to that type of concern?
You know, I'm for the grant, and I'm okay with the equipment. And I think if you're not a criminal, or if you're not engaged in criminal activity, you don't have anything to worry about. I'll leave it at that.
Yes, sir.
I'll make my thoughts known. I don't like traffic cameras, and I don't like this equipment. I believe that just full-blown open wide surveillance of this nature. I'm not a criminal. I'm not doing anything wrong, but it doesn't mean that it's not an invasion of your privacy. Even though you're on public roads, I still don't like the idea and the direction that this takes us for future decisions that could be made.
I'm assuming other agencies already use this equipment and probably have policy and procedures and things like that already that we can get, is what I'm thinking, Alvin, that they can somehow get, you know, something that's already made and follow, and we can see and go through and have it all in place. And, you know, I mean, I understand the use of it. We're 75, 64 corridor, drug traffic is running rampant through here. So I get what they're trying to do, but I agree with Alvin that we need to have it spelled out so it's not abused.
Captain Porter,
Do you even have a say so on that, though? I mean, if they get the grant, they can buy the equipment, and I don't know that we have any authority over the sheriff's office and how they utilize their equipment.
That'd be up to them to create their own policy.
Yeah.
It's like saying they have.
Rand shared that would be up to the sheriff's office to make their own policy regarding usage of that equipment.
Yeah, not subject to fiscal court approval.
We don't make the sheriff's department come to us and ask permission to use a radar gun, and I think this is like equipment.
Captain Porter, you know, his Zoom it'll come open like he's there. Captain Porter, are you there?
I am.
Would you like to make any comment or give any information related to the grant application?
Well, again, kind of like I was trying to indicate before, the reader uses, again, would use our state and national database for the plates. It's only going to pop up and show us on our computer system plates that are already flagged for some reason, meaning that the registered owner has warrants on them, or that plate is expired, or that, because like the information now, when we run a plate, it gives us information if somebody has insurance or not. So it would show up that kind of thing. The other thing that we could use, the only other way it would be popping up information is if we designated it to look for specific vehicles.
Let's like say an amber alert or a golden alert.
Definitely along those lines. And then again, just for instance, like Mallard Point right now already have cameras on their entrance and exit, their thing. We've
Gerald,
actually used
we're getting a
several
lot
times.
of background noise from Gerald.
Yes.
Okay, that's better.
Okay. Again, one instance is Mallard Point has those cameras at the entrance, and I understand that's a private subdivision kind of thing, but we've used their camera information several times to be able to track down people that were we were able to eventually determine had been breaking into cars and creating vandalism, different things like that. From that, now the license plate readers don't really pick up much of the car in and of itself, like the cameras at Mallard Point do. It's basically set at an angle where it focuses just directly on the back of the car, so that it picks up the license plate. Again, this information is public record, more or less. Anybody can go and file an open records thing and find out who owns what car, that kind of thing. But it does help us, again, if we have information that a white Dodge pickup truck or whatever has been seen in an area where we've had 7 or 8 burglaries, thefts, that kind of thing, we can set it up in that area. And we actually have the ability on the software to log in there, white Dodge pickup trucks. And then anytime one of those passes it, it would read the license plate, and we would be able to determine if we need to talk to that person or find out, or is that person somebody we usually deal with when it comes to thefts and burglaries, that kind of thing. So that we know approximately what time they're coming and going. And then again, it's also, we have the opportunity to use them out on the interstate. Either one, where we're in more of a situation there to be able to work some drug interdiction stuff, whether it's drugs or money or whatever coming up and down the interstate that affects our county anyway.
So my thought process is this: the potential good that could come from using this type of technology, in my mind, tips the scale for me. And then my confidence in my sheriff to use this technology in an appropriate manner tips the scale for me as well. I do understand and respect that technology can be used in a negative manner, and unintended consequences that exists. But I have confidence in Sheriff Hampton and his staff that getting someone that's trafficking in narcotics or some other illegal activity, being able to get them off the streets outweighs my concerns in regards to that. So now Rand has a couple of questions. Gerald.
Okay. Yep.
2 things, Gerald. One, does this let you do anything that you couldn't do yourself, but it just makes it more efficient? And then 2, let's say this thing locks on to a license plate of somebody who's, law abiding. There's no issue there. Does it not do anything, or does it show you that person's information?
Okay. The first, to answer the first question, it is just a more efficient situation. Again, we could have a deputy sit out on the side of the road and run every plate that went past him. We can legally do that to see if it pops up with anything that it's stolen, or that person has a warrant, or the tags are expired, or whatever. Again, like I said, I could sit a deputy out on the side of the road and have him just run every tag that comes through. But again, this makes that more efficient and a little more cost effective than me having an employee sit there 24 hours a day like I can with this license plate reader. So that just makes that more available, so to speak. To answer the other question, from the presentations that we've gotten on these things, it's generally it doesn't lock on to, it just skips over plates that don't have some kind of a flag on them, which means that it'll pop up and it'll let you know this tag's expired. This tag shows there's no insurance on this vehicle. This tag shows the registered owner has a warrant. Whatever, that's its general state, unless we go in and modify that to some degree, like I was just saying, to say that we're looking for specific vehicles, or we go in and do a specific search. Let's say we go and it's sitting on, again, I think one of the examples that they showed us was they felt like they were having a high traffic, they felt like anyway that they were having a large amount of drug trafficking going on in one specific spot, like a parking lot at a gas station or a grocery store, something like that. So what they did then was directed at the times they felt this was happening, and then they went in and set those time frames, and it kind of and you put in there. Again, you want to narrow the search. You don't want to look at every license plate of everybody that passes by the thing. That would be enormous. So you set a parameter between these 2 hours a day. What cars came through there more than once? And then you can kind of parameter it down from that and say who came in 2 or 3 times. And I think they ended up breaking up a couple different drug trafficking areas and catching people by seeing that this one car came in the parking lot at 7 o'clock in the morning and didn't leave until 1 o'clock in the afternoon at a gas station. It wasn't an employee. And then they had several cars that came in and out 4 and 5 times a day to the same thing. And then it just becomes investigation. You look into that. Is that somebody that we feel like is doing this and that? Whatever. So, yeah.
And Gerald, for the presentation given to you all, they indicated that courts have looked at this and it has passed constitutional muster.
Yes, sir. This company that we're looking at, the ones that we had when we showed interest, the main company that came into them, they have this company is worldwide. They have offices all over the United States, multiple different countries. That they also sell these to like set of people that have the bridge going over there from Ohio, Kentucky into Indiana, from Louisville to Indiana, that where you get a toll mailed to you every time you cross that bridge based on your license plate. It's the same kind of thing, and the same kind of situation. But yes, they've been in business for over 20 years doing this same thing.
Thank you, Gerald. Any other questions or discussion? Bill Burke.
So the total amount of the grant is $70,000. There's for 2 units that are $35,000 each. We apply for the grant, we get the grant. It's no money out of our pocket. Correct?
Correct. It's 100% match grant, and they can approve enough to buy 1, enough to buy 2, or they cannot approve it either way. But okay, it is 100% match grant, whatever they come up with.
100% match grant. I'm reading the grant application.
And then we get reimbursed.
It says they're $35,000 each. We get 2 of them for 70 grand. If you're saying it's a match grant, is it actually $140,000 or is it $70,000?
No,
how much money comes out of the county budget?
It is up to $70,000. They would match up to $70,000 is what they're saying.
Okay.
So you're saying that we have to spend money. If we're buying 2, we would spend $35,000, and then they would match $35,000, and we would get 2 devices.
Yes. No. What if they?
That's a match. That's a match grant, though.
Okay. Maybe I'm not saying it right, but either way, if they approve it up to switch, we ask for 70,000 because that will give us 2. If they approve that grant for $70,000, We would buy the two things, the county would, and then they would give us the $70,000 back. Whatever that is.
Okay. So we get reimbursed.
Yes, a reimbursement grant, I guess, is what you want to call it.
But
And I know you've already talked to companies, but it would be a bid situation because it's over $20,000.
Yes, it
So
would
you'd
be.
have to bid it out. Where would you get your bid specs from?
Well, the company that we talked to that came in and did it, they can provide specs, or they said they also could provide a sole source letter.
You can't do that. You can't. We know it's not a sole source because you've said you've talked to multiple companies, and it's not legal for them to provide specs and bid on the bid that gets put out. So
They could be on a state bid
specs
list.
on your own.
They could be on a state bid list or a national state bid list.
Right.
Okay.
Any other questions or comments?
I'd like to make a comment, and that's just, I kind of agree with David as far as feeling like a citizen that's not doing anything wrong and possibly being under some sort of surveillance, even though it may be a specific thing they're looking for. I don't know, just what direction are we going and how much more cameras and surveillance are we going to have in society? So I don't know. That's just my comment.
We're under surveillance every time we go into Walmart or Kroger's.
Yeah, I don't disagree.
That's also private property, though.
Okay. You're under surveillance when you go into the courthouse.
I think we all know
So Bill was like, you don't mind being under surveillance anywhere, maybe besides your house.
It doesn't matter if I'm not doing anything wrong.
I disagree with you. I don't like the fact that people watching me, even if I'm not doing anything wrong. Just my personal.
I guess I don't think about it that much. I don't like folks watching me either, but the reality is they do.
With that said,
how much more surveillance are we going to have in the future? You know what? That's kind of where I think, where does this go to?
Big Brother's watching.
I feel under lockdown right now.
He's got his eye on you.
with that said, is there a motion or does this die on the vine?
I'll make the motion.
There's a motion from Mr. Burt.
I'll second.
There's a second from Mr. Ellison. What other questions or discussion are there in regards to approve the grant application? All those in, go ahead.
If we proceed with this and it has to be bid out, do we get to approve the bid? I'm wondering, could we make some rules for deployment requirement for our issuing that bid? That's what I'm wondering. Can we, some way we can establish some rules for the use of this thing? Is there any way to do that?
I'll turn over to our legal counsel, Rand Marshall.
I don't think so. You know, you all are talking about your worry where this might lead. I'd have the same concern, Alvin, with that question. If you start putting parameters in which this can be used for the sheriff's department, you know, then you're essentially micromanaging. So no, I don't think so. I think you'd have to buy it or not, and then they make their policy.
I'll go back to what I said. I'll put my trust, even though I acknowledge the concerns that Kelly and David and Alvin have brought. You know, the potential to take, you know, drug traffickers off the road, and to me that outweighs my concern about privacy and you know, I'm going to put my faith in Sheriff Hampton and his staff to use it appropriately.
It's not this sheriff and staff that I'm worried about. It's, you know, if we get this, somebody else going to be using it in a year or two. Then if you,
I know.
Judge, another thing to your point is when you use the example of drug traffickers, I think of I-75. I-75 is a federal highway and should be mostly patrolled by state patrol, not our folks. Our folks should be out on our county roads and our state roads that are more two-lane highways, serving the citizens within the county, not patrolling and living on I-75. So, I mean,
I would ask Gerald to share. It is my understanding that the state police do not have dedicated staff to Scott County.
State police have one officer for every 3 counties almost,
And Gerald, can you
per
comment?
shift.
Yeah, as of right now, we don't have any state police dedicated to Scott County. We fall under Post 12 out of Frankfurt, and last year, sometime they decided to disperse because we do operate 24 hours a day.
Yes. Well, there's a motion and there's a second. Any other questions or discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
That's 2. Count me. All those opposed?
Kelly,
Kelly's opposed. Chad Wallace, Dave Livingston's opposed. Alvin Lyons is opposed.
I'm opposed. Rick
is opposed. Motion fails. Thank you all. Next, last thing that I have is a discussion about budget. Our budget committee has met, and we've met, I think, 3 times via Zoom, and we have gone through and essentially tried to look at the budget with the concern that we are going to realize a loss in revenue because of this COVID-19 event. And I think it's the appropriate thing. It's the thing that's in the best interest of the county. One of the things that we want to talk about is that we have kind of unfinished business out there that needs to be completed in the budget committee's mind. And that is the last phase of the compensation study, payroll adjustments for experience, based on experience. And Jeff is on here, and I'll give you just a minute to let Jeff talk, but just for what it's worth, Jeff has gone through every employee's application and then looked at any prior experience, then tried to verify all of that. Jeff has met with department head and every constitutional officer to go over the data from the adjustment that would be recommended. And I'm going to let Jeff talk, and then we'll go from there.
Thank you. Can everybody hear me? Okay, good. Yeah, we've, over the last 3-4 months since we finished phase 1, we've been working on this next group. And, you know, in a lot of cases, we didn't have applications and resumes. We obtained those and, of course, did an assessment of every single person's prior experience to make sure they received credit for related jobs to their current job. Yeah, I have met with every single department head. We've gone through, and they were supportive of the recommendations and the adjustments that we made. Of course, everybody agreed that they wouldn't get full credit for their prior work experience. It was 75%. So if they had a related degree, then they got credit for related degrees, and then they also got credit for their prior work experience at 75%. As a result of all that work, and going through the 240 applications and resumes, and pretty much an assessment, obviously, of every single one of those, it ends up having a positive impact or need for an adjustment for 75 of those individuals, and then 26 of those would be newly impacted with through this process. The cost of wages would be $199,900, and the benefit cost would be $83,000. So the total cost is right at $280,000 for this phase, including wages and benefits. The if you may recall, the first phase, the total cost was about $725,000. So it's far less than that, but still it's not, it's still a significant investment. The total cost, as far as looking at what the cost is to total payroll, the adjustments would result in about a 1.5% increase in our labor expense from what we're spending right now.
So
what questions can I answer for you?
With that said, the budget committee feels like this is something the court should consider. And, the timing is, in my opinion, and I'd call on David and Alvin to share as well, but my opinion is that this would be put into place July 1, and then we would move forward in our discussions that we've had with the budget committee. We'd move forward with salaries as is for the new budget with this change as part of that. But then at 6 months, we would make an assessment of where our revenues were, and we would determine at that point if we would want to consider any type of cost of living increase, like a 2% increase on salaries, after we saw where 6 months we were with this COVID-19 event. So David and Alvin, what would you all like to share about our discussions and about what Jeff has shared, and then anybody else as well?
I think you summed it up well, Judge. But we were midstream on this salary process we started a few months ago, and I would like to see us try to finish that.
Yeah, I think it's the fair thing to do. We've gone through the process and gotten everyone to where we believe they need to be from a market value standpoint. And I think we need to complete that with those 70 other individuals. And then along those lines, what we had talked about is a hiring freeze going forward until we figure out how everything is going to be affected from a budgetary manner.
So when you say hiring freeze, what we're saying is we're not going to add any new positions.
Correct.
After 6 months, we look at and make an assessment there.
Right.
Your net income has dropped by 10% already.
Oh, no doubt. You all comfortable with, that general direction of what we're discussing? And I think we put this all in the new budget, and then make a presentation to you. There's just a few things that we need to kind of clean up on a couple items, but we could share the proposal as a first draft, before this next meeting.
Judge, are you gonna, do we want to share what it could look like had we not had this situation, and then where we made a shift based on what we potentially see?
Yeah, we could share, essentially what we've done is try to cut 30%, an estimate on revenues, and then try to cut expenditures, reflecting that concern as well. So the one thing that we haven't really nailed down, we've gone over in the budget committee, is the nonprofit requests. And I'd like to share that with the whole court, and then get, some feedback, and then put that into the recommendation for the first draft. Just trying to be conservative. Those are going to have to, those allocations are going to have to reflect the cut as well. And the reality, the one thing that on that is the CASA of the bluegrass, that I need to talk with Mayor Prather, because I want to see what their consideration is. I think that merits a lot of consideration from the court on that one. But if the city's not going to be able to do that, then we need to look at how that would, it's kind of tied hand in hand, I think. But that would be appointing, that would appoint someone as a volunteer coordinator for CASA, and they handle all that. But then those court-appointed advocates would work with victims of child abuse and neglect. And Rand's right here. Rand, your experience, that's something we need to look at, isn't it?
Oh, yeah. Any kind of additional resources.
So with that said, in general, are you all comfortable with moving forward with what we've outlined in regards to the third phase of the compensation study, and then rolling that into the July 1 budget, and then looking after 6 months at to assess what our revenues are, and then the one we had 3 different departments request additional staff: fire, EMS, jail, and Jeller Broyles. We did a Zoom with Jeller Broyles the other day, and 2 days ago, and listened to his rationale. And part of his rationale, is his increased numbers of like 160 down there at one time is a concern, and I don't want it to be a crisis. But what we're also considering is a partnership with the Isaiah House, or the Shepherd's House, as an option that would also help reduce crowding at the detention center. So that's going to positively impact that as well. We just can't put a number on it right now. What other questions or discussions? And I don't have anything else after that. If you all feel comfortable moving forward with that, and then if anybody else has something they want to add in new business, otherwise we can adjourn.
One quick question, Judge. What was the number of employees that'll be impacted?
70.
75. I thought I heard him say something about 35 or 40.
It's 75. 75 employees impacted. What I had a clarification, is 26 newly impacted that weren't impacted in the first phase.
Oh, that's what I heard you say. 26 newly impacted. Okay. Thank you, Jeff.
You're welcome.
Anything else?
I have one thing for consideration. I had a visitor in my office yesterday, and some of you guys know Steve Price. He offered to fix our clock for free. I told him that we've had that contracted out, but he'd still like to look at it. And I told him that we needed him to be insured, but he said that he would find a waiver. So I just wanted to bring that to the court for your consideration.
Our county attorney also has something to add there as well.
I've spoken to Steve twice, including this morning right before the meeting, and I gave him my word that I would extend that offer to you all as well. Essentially what Kelly just said, and so now I've done it.
And I have spoken to Mr. Price on numerous occasions about this same issue. My response to Mr. Price has been that and on the recommendation of a licensed engineer and architect, and that has been bid out, that work has been awarded, and that work is in process. So that's been my response. One last thing, Dwayne brought up a good point, is I had been in conversation with a company, a local company, about possibly cleaning patrol vehicles, ambulance, different vehicles at road department. They essentially spray a fog into the vehicle, and that fog has the way it was explained to me, it has a residual effect, of 90 days of providing protection to kill viruses. One other option is something like what the school uses. It's an electrostatic mister that is hand carried with a battery, and they mist areas, buses, and schoolrooms. Dwayne, you had commented that you felt like that was an effective thing at the school system. you know,
Yeah, I don't know a lot about this other residual deal, how it can somehow stay on there for 90 days. I'd have to see the comparisons and whether or not that's better or not. It's pretty, what we use is very, relatively cheap and pretty easy to use, pretty effective that we know of. I'm not a physician or scientist or anything, but the studies I look at look like it's effective.
I was going to ask, and since Mike Hennigan's still on here, I discussed this with Mike Hennigan, and I discussed it with Brandon Remley some too. But Mike, could you help me do a little research on the two different options? And then we could maybe report back. It might be something that we move forward with, and try to get us a little extra protection with the virus situation.
And in that meantime, if the agencies need, our equipment, we're dead right now as far as the buildings. We're still using them on times and some of our delivery stuff. But if the city, county, or whatever EMS, whatever agencies need to be fogged right now, we're glad to let them use our equipment, or we can, they can pull their vehicles up to us and we can do it for them. However, I mean, it's like using a daggone leaf blower. I mean, this is easy to use. It doesn't take any type of, there's no safety, there's no issues going forward. So if they need help in the meantime, we're glad to do it.
I think we could possibly buy the and use, borrow your all's machines at the same time.
Yeah.
But for a long term, I'd like to ask Mike to help me do a little research on different options. And then lastly, I just want everybody out there watching to continue social distancing, use best practice, stay at home as much as possible, and kind of budget when you go out, and together. Hopefully the light at the end of the tunnel is closer than it was this time last week, and into this, and it's a challenge, but I think our county's responding. People are doing a great just want to wish everybody a safe Easter weekend. And I know there's a lot of folks that would love to be in church, and I for one are one of those, and I'll be worshiping from home on my online Southland Christian Church broadcast. And there's some churches that are going to do a car lot, a car-based service. As long as those folks stay in their car and follow social distancing guidelines, the governor has said and so is Dr. Crystal Miller as well. Anyone have anything else they want to add? And
yeah, Judge. Judge.
Yes.
Dwayne kind enough to let us use that machine until we figure out whatever. Me and the staff at the road department, since we're centrally located, comes by there anyway, would be glad to work with everybody on that.
JR, I appreciate that. If you and I maybe talk and then schedule like a day where, the sheriff's department comes through, then, try to set up a schedule and do that. That'd be awesome.
Yes, sir.
Stacy, you had something?
I just wanted to comment. You put on Facebook if anybody had questions or comments regarding this meeting to email me. And I just checked. We do not have any emails yet, but I did get one note, but I think you've covered it. Steve Price said, if we will buy sheet metal, lumber, nuts, and bolts, he will do the labor for free. I think you've already addressed that, but I was told to say it.
Hey, we appreciate it. Is there any other questions, discussion? Here, Rand has.
Mike, if you could answer this, if I understood what you said yesterday in a meeting, if we had to set up a facility for treatment of victims of the virus, that can be, at least in some circumstances, paid for by Homeland Security or some other governmental agency with pre-approval or other hoops to jump through. We've discussed this, and David has asked some good questions about including cost. And if I understood you right, that might be something the federal government would bear if we do the right things. Can you talk about that a minute?
Absolutely. What I was saying yesterday, and I'll repeat, we have the opportunity to set up an alternative care center if the hospital gets overrun or we have an outbreak at a long-term care facility. But the regulations from federal government say we have to have pre-approval for the operation before we can even consider getting reimbursed. So I'll be starting the forms in order to get that pre-approval from FEMA. And, hopefully we won't have to file the papers, but at least we will have the pre-approval and then get up to 100% reimbursement once the facility has been demobilized.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mike. Anything else? It is, one other thing is county offices will close at lunch today in recognition of Good Friday.
Judge is buying lunch for anybody that's interested.
All right. What'd you say, Dave? I couldn't hear you.
It's okay. You said all right.
All right. Is there a motion to adjourn?
Motion.
Is there a second? Second from Mr. Lyons. All those in favor?
Bill's already left.
Yeah, he's already left. Thank you all. Appreciate the time. Be safe.